Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I tout four types of freedom: financial, time, location, emotional freedom. It's been one of my honor to highlight physicians that are doing things outside of the box, either entrepreneurship, investing, thought leadership, and really trying to hone down and bring awareness to physicians about the importance of physician finances. So today we have Dr. Virgie Bright-Ellington from New York City, and she's going to talk to us all about her journey, physician finances, and why it's so important for physicians. Virgie, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I know we had connect similar networks, and I'm happy to have you on the podcast. And I know you talk a lot about the importance of physician finances. A lot of physicians are coming out and speaking out about that. So tell us more about yourself, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I am the principal of an education media brand, Crush Medical Debt, which helps people struggling with medical bills. And my background is I've been a board certified internal medicine physician for longer than I want to admit, almost 25 years. I can't believe it. I usually don't say that out loud. I just say, oh, for a long time. And I was a health insurance executive for about 10 years. And then a series of events landed me to starting the second business, the second startup, in I'd say about 20 years. And that's how I landed here. It's a long journey, very interesting, but definitely doing things that my physician ex-husband said, you shouldn't do. You really need to make sure that you stay in clinical medicine no matter what. And you should be grateful and just stay in clinical medicine 100%.
Yeah, we can talk about all of the cliches in the
he said, buy a big house, live fancy life, and make sure that you stay 100% clinical work. Well, you don't have to stay 100%, but mostly clinical work.
Yeah. So tell us more about Crush Medical Debt. It sounds very interesting, and why the need?
Well, I have to tell you, I thought I'd seen like the whole 360-degree view of the U.S. healthcare system and how it works financially, from the provider side. And then, during my 10 years working for a very large health insurance, private, commercial, publicly traded commercial insurance company, I thought I'd seen all perspectives. But it wasn't until I became a patient, had complications. It's a long story. Complications from surgery to treat breast cancer this was in 2020. And I didn't listen to my surgeon who said, you just had a hysterectomy. The hysterectomy was done because my breast cancer is HRPR positive, hormone sensitive. So we were doing a prophylactic hysterectomy, and going for my one post-op check, and he says, no lifting, and blah 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 for 6 weeks. And I'm just listening to him, and I said, finally, when he said, don't lift more than 5 pounds for the next 6 weeks. And I looked at him, I said, well, I have chickens. He's like, what? Rightfully so. I said, I have chickens, and their feed comes in these big 35-pound bags, and they need to get fed. So I have to lift them. He says, well, I have to lift these heavy bags. And he says, well, decant them into 5-pound containers and don't lift more than 5 pounds. Didn't listen to him, and rolled in 2 months later into the ER because the bowel was herniating and becoming gangrenous in the herniated thing. So I woke up after the surgery. I woke up and I realized I had a roommate. I was like, well, good news, bad news. I'm not in the ICU, so I'm going to be okay, because I realized I really messed up when I realized I was probably septic before they put me under. And then I woke up and I said, well, the bad news is I have a roommate. I must have been really sick, because I always make sure I get a private room whenever I go into the hospital. Anyway, it turns out my roommate It was this young woman, mom of toddler, who basically she wasn't working outside the home because her kids weren't school age yet. And the husband worked at a 24-hour diner. So very, very, very modest income. And I thought, I'm listening to her story, and I thought I knew it all until she told me, the whole perspective of, the US healthcare system, and the patients are billed appropriately and as accurately as possible. And she told me that the last time she had been in the hospital a year prior for something similar, for a serious issue, after a weekend, a good solid week in the hospital, on the day of discharge, the rep from the billing department came in and told her before she could leave, she had to sign a financial agreement saying that she would agree to pay what her insurance doesn't pay. And I'm telling you, Dr. Lou, the curtain dropped. I saw red. I was enraged because I knew she had just signed away her financial future for her and her family. And, at best, they're going to end up bankrupt. There's no way, with their modest income. And then, I thought, you know what, Virgie, don't get angry. Don't get mad. Get to getting, do something. And that's how Crush Medical Debt was born. So what I do is I have the book was released in May, What Your Doctor Wants You to Know to Crush Medical Debt, the second in the What Your Doctor Wants You to Know series. In 2008, 2009, the first of the series came out, What Your Doctor Wants You to Know, but doesn't have time to tell you. And in addition to the book, we have a 50-minute video course that teaches people struggling with bills the top ways to protect yourself from America's number one cause of debt, stress, and bankruptcy. Now, the goal is, our target audience is the American public. And so I wrote the book, Crush Medical Debt, specifically for a 4th to 9th grade reading level. And I don't think I always successfully made it, but most of the time, I'm pretty sure I did. And that's what we're doing. So we teach folks how to protect themselves from the number one cause of this country's debt, stress, and bankruptcy. And we share this information with employers, right? Where do most folks in this country get their health insurance from, right? From their employers. So we're partnering with employers to help them teach their employees financial wellness, essentially protecting their employees from stress, the number one cause of stress and debt in this country. And I have to say, the journey is that I feel really, really fortunate. Had, somewhat of a solid significant, I'd say, personal financial literacy, so that I was able to fund my dreams. So I didn't have to do clinical medicine. I could step out and say, I'm going to give all of my time to this really, really needed issue for the American public.
Yeah, that's quite a very inspiring story, and how you used, personal loss and tragedy to do something, beneficial. So, and, the physician community really needs this. Honestly, the healthcare system is broken. What's interesting is that, what are some of the most common ways that people can, prevent, either stress or, medical bills, medical debt? What are some steps that people can start taking today to, mitigate that risk in the event that it happens?
What I teach people, Dr. Lou, is that there's only one right way to pay a medical bill, and that involves 3 steps. Step 1 is calling them. When you get a bill, it's not actually, usually 9 times out of 10, it's not really a bill. It's a statement. It's a wish list by the provider, hoping that you'll fall for it. You think it's a real bill. A real bill has CPT codes. And I explain to people, CPT codes are just like barcodes. When you go into a store, every product has one. And in the US medical system, every medical service has a barcode, and they're called CPT codes. So if you look at your statement, if it doesn't have CPT codes, then it's not a real bill. You're going to call the provider, the number on that statement, and you're going to ask for a real bill with CPT code. Now, step 2, you're going to take that, once you get it, you're going to take that real bill with CPT codes and input the CPT codes, Google it to find out, like with a barcode, when you run it through a scanner, it tells you what the service is or the product is, in this case, the service. And for instance, 9983 is an established outpatient office visit. And then while you're there Googling, you're also going to Google what Medicare pays for that service. And then step 3, you're going to call back the provider and say, hey, you know what, you billed me $10,000 for a hernia repair. And in my case, in my research, you know what, Medicare pays, $2,000 for this. I want an interest-free payment plan for $2,000, and I can only pay $100 a month. And I understand it's going to take me a long time, but that's the best I can do. And the reason why healthcare systems and medical care systems and hospital systems agree to it, because they know that it's less expensive to guarantee to get a little bit of something. How's it go? A little bit of something is better than all of nothing. They know it's easier to come after you. It's less expensive than to have to chase you and maybe have to eventually sell the debt for pennies on a dollar. So that's why, they'll give you pushback. That's their job. They've been trained to do that in the billing department, but stick to your guns and do it. So that's what I teach people. And again, I find it really interesting of what we see in the media in terms of, the myth of the physician who's wealthy. But yeah, we have more resources because we work so much harder than I can't think of any other industry in terms of hours. When you think of the hours that we typically work, we make, at best, if even minimum wage, especially starting out in residency. But, I wish I could talk to physicians, especially physicians starting their training. And so I'm really glad that you're doing this work in terms of hosting this podcast and educating physicians about, becoming, financially literate. So none of this, Dr. Lou, would have been possible if I hadn't have, when I was when I was a resident, that I didn't sign up for the, tax deferred retirement thing, So usually with academic institutions, they're called 403Bs, basically a 401k. And especially more and more in this system, we're going to, at some point in our career, we're going to be employed physicians. Sign up for the deferred or tax deferred retirement accounts, no matter what, because you're working hard. And then at the end of the time, especially in training, you're going to be an employed physician at least while you're in training. So that's 3 to 4 years of money set aside. Max, do as much as you can. As definitely you have to do it if your employer, if the institution matches. That's just giving away free money if you don't, you're letting go of free money if you don't do it. But max to what they match. And when you look up, when you're ready to start a venture, when you're like, you know what, I'm not going to be forced to work in this manner. I don't like being employed by this particular corporation. I realize my company or my institution has been bought by private equity, and I'm not doing that anymore. You have the freedom to do that because you can do what's called, I'm dating myself again, it's called Regulation D financing. And it's named after the part of the statute in the IRS that says you can take your IRA and or 401k, definitely your IRA, 100% of the time. And I'm not sure if it's 100% of the time your 401k, but I think it is recently. Anyway, it's a statute that says you can take your business and instead of your IRA investing in, stocks and in, publicly traded corporation, in a mutual fund or, ETF funds, the whole ETFs, whatever, you can invest in your own business. So there are companies, there's a company I worked with twice in 20 years that will help you change your business. Usually the businesses that we start are startup small businesses we hold them as LLCs or S Corps. The process is this company that I particularly work with, and they didn't pay me to say this, by the way. It's called Benetrends, because I love them so much. I just adore them with the work that they're doing, and they're helping folks fund their dreams without having to go to private equity or VCs. Right. So anyway, so once they help you convert your business into a C corporation so that you can invest that IRA money, 401k and IRA money, 403b, 401k, IRA money into your business. So you don't have to spend time and just kind of fall off the track because you're trying to chase after VC money and that kind of thing. And it just takes away, who has time for that? We don't have time for that as physicians, right? So I have to say that was I know I would not be able to do what I'm doing if it weren't for Regulation D financing. So fast forward, when I started Crush Medical Debt, I went back to Benetrends and said, hey, I'm ready to do Regulation D financing again to start this particular business. And oh my gosh, I never felt so old until when the guy said, what's Regulation D financing? So it's been so long that they changed the name. They've made it more, I guess, layperson friendly terminology. So it's now called ROBS, Rollover as Business Startup. That's how I got here. That's how I got to Crush Medical Debt. And just, what? It's like, I don't understand why the media they just talk about the same old stuff that has nothing to do with anything. And no one knows I never heard anybody talking about ROBS or Regulation D financing back in the day. I happened to find, I subscribed back in the day to Entrepreneur or something. And it was like a little tiny article where somebody started their company with it. And they mentioned the company Benetrends. And I was like, oh, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that's interesting. I have a lot of individuals, they have a 401 or 403b. They have some. I know in 2020 with the COVID relief package, they allowed you to take, borrow against it and then repay it, after a certain time. What are the stipulations about repayment? If you withdraw it, before your.
Oh my gosh! Thank you for asking that. I forgot to clarify that. Why this is so huge, ROBS, Rollover as Business Startup, is so huge, is because it's not a loan. There's many things. So you don't have the 10% penalty that you're taking out. Let's compare the two sides. If you're doing a ROBS and you're just saying, hey, I'm going to take out a loan or completely liquidate my IRA 401k or 403b. Mm-hmm. If you're under 59 and a half, you're going to lose 10% right off right there. And then if you don't pay it back, if you take out a loan, you don't pay it back within 5 years, like you get, for whatever reason, get separated from the institution, the employer, that will be registered as a withdrawal and you'll be taxed full stop. So let's say, just make the math easy. Let's say you have $100K in your 403b, your retirement account. If you don't take it out as a ROBS, if you don't do a ROBS, you're going to have 10% taken off. Let's say another 30%. You're down. Instead of having $100K to invest in your company, you only have $60K. With the ROBS, it's 100%. You take that and just, instead of investing in Apple, you're investing in Crush Medical Debt. That's what you're doing. So there's no payback. It is what it is. Now, it is more expensive when it comes around to tax time because C corporations, the taxing is an issue and that kind of thing. And you have to make sure you hire a good CPA, have a good CPA on board. It's like having a real company, corporation. So that's the only difference. But you have $60K to invest if you do it, with a loan or take it, totally liquidate your retirement account versus with the ROBS or, historically called Regulation D financing. You have that whole $100K.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And is there any sort of special paperwork you have to fill out, any forms or?
You keep making me feel old, Dr. Lou. So yeah, back in the day, almost 20 years ago, the first time I worked with Benetrends and had them invest in the company I had back then, my startup back then. It took about 3 or 4 months of paperwork going back and forth. But 20 years later, they've got it streamlined where it takes, instead of like 3 or 4 months, it takes like 4 weeks.
Mhm.
And they have it down to an art. It's automated, and they tell you what you need. They'll call you. They have each person assigned to help you each step of the way. Say, okay, you need this. Okay, and it's just so straightforward and easy.
Mhm.
I have to say, I'm kind of annoyed that the personal finance media doesn't talk about this, and entrepreneur media folks. Why isn't anybody talking about this? Everybody just talks about VC, private equity, private investors, angel investors. What? Why?
Yeah. Well, this has been a very fascinating discussion, and we'll have to continue it, subsequent episodes. But that Rob's act that you described is very interesting, and I know a lot of individuals would be interested in contacting you, visiting your website, or in even learning more about you. So how can they do that?
Sure. So I am, you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out. The company site is crushmedicaldebt.com. And Benetrends is, I swear they haven't paid me a dime. I just love them. I just feel like they're doing like an American public service. That Benetrends is spelled B as in boy, E-N as in Nancy, E-T as in trends, R-E, and just Google them and they'll pop up and you'll find them. They're pretty accessible.
Excellent. And for all the audience out there listening, Ellington resources will be in the links in the show notes. And so, Virgie, it's been a great time having you on the podcast. And, it's great to have other physicians, thought leaders, with the same mindset and with the intention of changing the face of medicine. So thanks so much for that. And we look forward to hearing for your future success.
Thank you so much for having me. Much appreciated.